Welcome to section 13.2, part 1. This is the 143rd session of the CISSP exam prep series. This part lays the groundwork for how systems recognize and trust the people and things that ask for access. In this session, we'll unpack the core model behind access control. We'll answer several questions. What are the three functions at the heart of identity and access management? How do identification and authentication work as a pair? What are subjects and objects, and why do their roles switch? How do you prove someone's identity when you first meet them? What do authorization and accounting add? And what are the three factors you can use to prove identity? Why does this matter beyond the exam? Because every login you will ever design rests on these ideas. Picture onboarding a new nurse at a hospital network. Before she touches a single record, the system must confirm she is really her, decide what she may open, and log everything she does. Get that chain right, and trust flows cleanly. Break one link, and accountability quietly disappears. So what are the three core functions of identity and access management? They form a model you will see everywhere. First, authentication confirms that a user, service, or agent is who it claims to be. Second, authorization decides which actions that entity is allowed to take. Third, accounting keeps an audit trail of what actually happened. Together, these three are known as authentication, authorization, and accounting. Think of them as a nightclub door. The bouncer checks your identity, decides which rooms you may enter, and the cameras record where you go. How do identification and authentication actually work together? They are a two-step pair, and you need both. Identification is when a subject claims an identity, like typing a username, swiping a smart card, or presenting a face to a scanner. Authentication is when the system verifies that claim against stored records, usually by checking a secret. A core rule is that every subject must have a unique identity. Picture arriving at a secure building. Stating your name is identification, but the guard still has to match your badge before the door opens. Why is a claimed identity worthless on its own? Because a name proves nothing without verification. Imagine a user types the username for an employee named John Doe, but never enters a password. If the system lets him in on the name alone, it has no proof he is actually John. Anyone who learns that username could walk right in. And keep in mind, the secret used to verify identity must be protected, which is why passwords are stored as hashes, never as plain readable text. Does one authentication method fit every situation? No. And matching the method to the environment is the real skill. Every technique carries trade-offs, so you weigh strength against convenience for the setting. A facility handling highly classified material demands very strong, layered proof. A shared login for students in a classroom needs far less. And remember, these same methods do not only verify people, they also verify devices and services asking for access. What are subjects and objects? And why does the distinction matter? Access control is really about the relationship between two roles. A subject is the active party that reaches out to get information. An object is the passive party that holds or provides it. A quick shortcut is to read subject as user and object as file. But subjects also include programs, services, and computers. And objects include databases, printers, and processes. So the model is broader than just people opening documents. How can the same thing be both a subject and an object? Because the roles flip depending on who is asking. The active party is always the subject, and the passive party is always the object, but an entity can swap between them. Take a web application serving pages. When a user requests a page, the application is the object being queried. Then it becomes a subject, as it reaches out to grab a cookie and look up the user in a database. Finally, it flips back to an object as it delivers the finished page. How do you prove who someone is the very first time? This is identity proofing, and it happens before any account exists. For a new employee, human resources checks physical documents like a passport, a driver's license, or a birth certificate. Once the documents are verified as genuine, registration begins, which can be as simple as creating an account and setting a password. If the organization uses biometrics, registration also captures something like a fingerprint. Think of it as a notary confirming you are real before signing you into the system. How do online services prove identity for someone they never meet in person? They often use knowledge-based authentication. The service pulls facts about you from authoritative sources like credit bureaus, then asks questions only you should be able to answer, such as details about a recent car purchase or a past address. You usually get limited time to respond. Picture opening an online bank account. The bank quizzes you on your own financial history to confirm the person applying is genuinely you. What are cognitive passwords, and where do they fall short? Cognitive passwords are security questions, like your first pet's name or your mother's maiden name. Systems collect the answers at registration, then use them later to reset a forgotten password through self-service or a help desk. The problem is that this information often lives on social media or turns up in a simple search. If an attacker finds your answers online, they can hijack your password reset. This is exactly why modern guidance discourages leaning on these static questions. What do authorization and accounting add to the picture? These are the two elements that follow a proven identity. Authorization grants a subject access to specific objects based on that proven identity. So an administrator lets a user open certain files and not others. Accounting holds subjects responsible by auditing their actions, logging when someone reads, changes, or deletes a resource into an audit trail. And because the user was properly authenticated first, those logs provide non-repudiation. The person cannot credibly deny doing something the record clearly shows. Why does authorization vary while identification does not? Because identification is all or nothing, but authorization comes in shades. Either your credentials prove your claimed identity, or they do not, with no middle ground. Authorization, by contrast, spans a wide range. You might read a file but not delete it, or print a document but not manage the print queue. Administrators grant only the privileges each person needs to do their job, following least privilege. This matters even more for automated agents, where overly broad permissions can let a system take harmful actions on its own. How does accountability survive even when authorization fails? Here is a subtle but important point. Accountability depends on solid identification and authentication, but it does not depend on authorization. Once you have identified and authenticated a user, the logs can track everything they attempt, including reaching for resources they were never allowed to touch. So even a blocked attempt gets tied to a real name. Without credentials, everyone would be anonymous, and no log could ever say who did what. What are the 3 factors you can use to prove identity? There are 3 primary categories, and they climb in strength. Something you know is a memorized secret, like a password, a personal identification number, or a passphrase. Something you have is a physical object you carry, like a smart card, a hardware token, or a phone running an authenticator app. Something you are is a biometric trait, like a fingerprint, a face scan, or an iris pattern. Using a single one is single factor, while combining 2 or more different categories is multi-factor authentication. Knowledge is the weakest, and biometrics the strongest, though even a fingerprint reader can be fooled by a molded fake. So let's bring it together. Identity and access management rests on 3 functions: authentication, authorization, and accounting. Identification and authentication pair up, so a subject claims and then proves who they are, and subjects act on passive objects. You establish identity through proofing, registration, knowledge-based checks, and cognitive passwords. Authorization decides what a proven identity may touch, while accounting logs it all for non-repudiation. And you prove identity with 3 factors: something you know, have, and are. Lock these foundations in, and the rest of the model builds cleanly on top. The MCQs covering all the topics and concepts from this session are available on rucloud.com. Practice the chapter-specific MCQs before moving on to the next session. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or feedback, post a comment below or email us. I will see you in the next session.